there's a scene where April, like the robot mask that she's wearing falls off and bursts into flames, basically. And we were trying to like light this mask on fire, like in like the middle of the city with like police officers around.
It was around 9 p.m. and it was just a lot of things going on. We were filming on the streets in the middle of like an intersection, and it was just so much. I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many things happening. I was overstimulated a little bit. And the next thing you know, I see like celebrities down the street while at the same time they were burning a mask.
Like, well, everyone's like, watch, and like we just set this thing on fire, and we were fully like this, you know, we created a small fire.
I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, this is my life right now.
So April is chased by these girls, like Holly and her army, into this location in the woods, basically this like little house in the woods, and April, you know, she runs in and she's like all scared, she's stressed, and then she has like this like waking nightmare almost of, you know, she's kind of going crazy, right? She's like, this experience has rattled her so much, and she starts reflecting on another friendship, if you will, that went wrong with this character named Rebecca. So she's like searching, and she's having this waking nightmare, and it's chaotic and it's scary.
This song's my favorite song. This song, I thought, had the most fun instrumental out of the whole record. I thought all the trumpets, I thought all the drums were awesome. I thought the vocals danced around all the instrumentation beautifully. Absolutely, hands down, my favorite song on the record. And I think there's such an interesting dynamic. I think it creates this push and pull between the verses and the chorus that just really, to me, give this sense of elation when you hit those choruses. And I know the lyrics of the song essentially are still very based in conflict, but I don't know, it's just such a fun song.
Rebecca, so we had like certain actions, and I was like, okay, Valerie, go. That was it. And I don't know, it you know, but these kinds of videos that you have just kind of like one location only could be boring, but at the end I thought it was fantastic. It was dynamic.
All the while, Rebecca is at this coffee shop waiting for her. You know, she's getting ready to crush, you know, April, and to almost like take her identity and ruin her life, essentially. But April never shows up at the end. Santiago bursts through the door and kind of wakes her from this waking nightmare, right, that she's been having / showing Santiago, right? So she escapes in that way. And we shot the coffee shop, Rebecca Let's Get Coffee, we shot it on the first day, and it was in this really cute little restaurant. It was just a beautiful contrast with like what was happening in the nightmarish part of this video. And I remember it was scary because we just kind of walked in with like the big cameras, and we were like, can we film here? And like the guy working behind the counter was like, I'm sure. Like I bought a Coca-Cola, and I was like, can we film here? And they let us, so that was cool. You wake up and you're in the world of roses. You're almost like back in present day, right? And you assume some time has passed between the moment they were under the tree to them being in this, in the apartment together. And Roses starts off in the apartment, and Santiago's getting ready for work, and he's leaving April behind, and she's kind of like feeling lonely, she's feeling sad, she's feeling abandoned, but he has to go out into the city and work. And so it kind of follows April as she takes control of the situation, and she's like, I can't take this anymore, I'm gonna go find him. But as she ventures through the city, she puts on almost like this like robot armor, right? And she transforms herself to survive the concrete jungle, if you will.
So this is out of the ballads of the song, Roses is my favorite. I think this one is the one that's closest to some of the demos I had been receiving. It is very rooted in just having the piano be isolated along with Valerie's vocals. But it became this pivotal storytelling moment because we wanted it to start morphing into this, otherworldly sound. So we had the raw, vulnerable vocal, but by the end of it, we wanted it to start morphing and creating this technological digital tone to her voice. So we were using all kinds of vocoders and tune tools that we had to create this sense of change in the song.
Roses was written about a time in my life where I lived in a city that I was unfamiliar with and just didn't feel, I wasn't happy living there. And I felt like I had to put on this tough exterior to survive.
But you know that there's something behind those lyrics, behind all these things, and it's like, I don't know, reflecting, I guess, Valerie at that moment was really going back to the moment.
And so when Valerie had explained what the song meant, in her personal experience, it was her experience of living in New York City, which in my experience had been some of my favorite times in my life when I got to spend time in that city. So I was able to tap into maybe not the same emotion, but a very emotionally centered experience around that city. And a lot of it came down to crafting sounds that sounded like the city, the squealing of the brakes and the grinding of the railroad tracks. And if you don't feel welcomed or even accepted or you feel like you have your place or you can find your place in that city, it can be very overwhelming and it can be very isolating. So I took those elements and tried to just push them into that same sense of isolation that I think the rest of the production was already giving with the lone piano and the vocal, but ultimately to create that sense of longing. I think that was the most touching sentiment that I wanted to portray with that song.
Roses on the paper was my favorite video. I thought it was a canvas for so many possibilities. I like this idea of being in the city, April turns into a cyber kind of thing. We had originally instead of a mask, it was an arm, and we tried to in pre-production try to get the arm, to build the arm, but it was so messy and I felt it was not symbolic as something that you put in your face. And I remember we were shooting the scene, and I remember it was the second day of shooting, and I remember we had to do, it was a simple shot. Santiago was getting ready to get out of work, and we were doing 13 takes, 14, 15, and it was weird, and Valerie was like, no, I don't know, and it felt weird. So she says, what if my husband does kind of the rehearsal with me?
It was wonderful working with Valerie, just with the ease that she represented as far as being able to pick up a scene if we had to reshoot it again with just the same amount of easy demeanor as the first 4 or 5 times.
That was the first time I met Marco, and he was really nice. He was really great to work with, but I was a little nervous because Santiago is a character that's based on my husband, George.
And I think what definitely helped inform my perspective of, if not who he is, what he represented, was getting to speak with Valerie while we were not on camera. So asking her, how did you guys meet? What makes love last? Why him? And just why does it work? So in seeing, all of the values that she felt in him and she found in him.
Like April, he's his own entity, and there's a bit of a line between them, but he was based on my husband, and so I remember thinking everything that I do with my husband is just so natural, and so the way we show our affection to each other as a couple. And I remember I didn't know what to do, right? Like I didn't know how to emulate this with another person.
Yeah, there were times when, for whatever reason, maybe Valerie just wasn't feeling it in the moment, whatever the director or whatever the scene required. So I was able to step aside for a moment, observe, let her take in whatever energy she needed. And then I just kind of had to, once he stepped aside, I came in and we just picked it up from where we had left off, and it really was effective in that manner.
So I was able to kind of like observe myself as I interacted with George and like apply that with Marco, and he was very patient with me, and it was good. It was you know, we were able to bring to life that moment of like feeling abandoned, like feeling like the person you love has to venture out and away from you, and that conflict.
And I guess like that captured Valerie's energy, and then when you didn't take it, I mean, I remember I said cut because I felt bad because I saw in her eyes truth.
The pre-production, Nicolas and I like talked about it, and we were like, oh, like should we do the kiss? Like I think it necessitates a kiss, right? Because it's like this big love story at the end. You're not gonna have a kiss.
That was like, Valerie, this guy just helped you the ocean and did that, and I mean, you have to give him a kiss if you want. So it was this whole discussion because I really I felt it was necessary.
Almost didn't happen because I had never done a kiss on camera. I just never had a reason to kiss someone that wasn't, you know, my husband. And so I was really stressed for that. And I remember that day I looked up like how to kiss on camera. Like I just didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what people usually did.
The kiss in the city center, I feel like we handled that very professionally, very well. I think as with any other scene that you're going to be asked to do, just handle it with maturity, but also with honesty and dedication.
It was natural, and it was beautiful, and you could see. And I mean, if you show me that, I would say like, oh yeah, they love each other.
There's a scene where April, like the robot mask that she's wearing, falls off and bursts into flames, basically. And we were trying to like light this mask on fire, like in like the middle of the city with like police officers around.
We had to create an effect that it like imprinted on her face, so I had to get red eyeshadow and create like a shadow look. It looked really realistic and cool.
Shooting Roses in the City was also challenging because we shot it in Brickell City Center, and they told us to like get off the property.
So we ended up doing it in another street. We're trying to think about another options to shoot this thing, and we ended up doing it anyways. But then we had to burn the mask.
It was around 9 p.m. and it was just a lot of things going on. We were filming on the streets in the middle of like an intersection, and that was just so much. I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many things happening. I was overstimulated a little bit. And the next thing you know, I see like celebrities down the street while at the same time they were burning a mask. We saw Will Smith, Fat Joe, and Robert Kardashian. Yeah, and he was like this.
And everybody's like crowding, you know, just obviously the excitement of whatever. I think it was the Bad Boys premiere. And I was like, let's do it now.
And then I remember it was Fat Joe next to us, and I guess he stopped in the spot we were. And I remember I was with the camera, and I guess he was like, and I was like, okay, he's gone, let's do it.
Like, well, everyone's like watching, and like we just set this thing on fire, and we were fully like this. You know, we created a small fire which we put out.
I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, this is my life right now. That was like a very like wow moment for me.
Things My Lovers Gave Me, it was actually the only song that I didn't initially start writing. So a friend of mine had written this song, Things My Lovers Gave Me, and she's like, I want you to sing this song. She just randomly was like, you know, one day came up, she's like, I want you to sing this song. And I was like, this is crazy because immediately when she played it for me, I was like, this song has to be the last track of this album that I'm writing. And it was just so perfect. It just wrapped everything up so well. And so I wrote a few verses on it. I made a few changes in terms of like the lyrics and the sound and the production a little bit. But it was ultimately like this just triumphant recap of everything. And it was just so perfect that she had given me this song, because it was a little meta too. It was like things my lovers gave me, and then like my friend gives me a song. Like it was kind of cute that it turned out that way. And then also it was just beautiful that it was it was just the perfect way to end the album, to end the story, to end the film.
So when Valerie was like, yeah, I have an album and I have, I think, what was it? It was like 11 songs. She's like, but I want one more. And I was like, listen to this. Like, I think I was just like, listen to it. Like, no expectation. I was like, just listen. Like, what do you think? And then she was like, I got you. And then she just turned it into something like magical. So Things My Lovers Gave Me came to me when I was in a relationship, and I was pretty happy. I mean, we're not together anymore, but I was content in the relationship that I was in at that time. But I was also reflecting a lot on the past and like how people, like not just lovers, right, but like the people in your life, like one thing leads to another, and if you hadn't met this person, you wouldn't have learned that lesson or had that growth or that moment.
And when we had heard that song, that was one that had kind of fallen in the same camp as 1945, where I realized, okay, this is another one where we gotta just get people moving. Like the concepts are there and there's a lot of storytelling, but ultimately this is one where let's let the music kind of shine. Let's let people have fun. Let's let people dance. And I think it was very fitting for it to be placed last, because I think it is the most optimistic song on the record. It's the one where there is this sense of resolution.
Was the first night actually of shooting, and it was essentially Valerie just running.
Things My Lovers Gave Me it's a reflection on everything that has happened. So April's like running through this like alleyway, and she's kind of like having flashbacks of like everything that has led up to this moment. Just a very independent reflection. And finally she, there's a moment where she jumps and she changes clothes, and it's like she's a new person. It's almost like a rebirth.
And I was just concerned about, her integrity running. so many hours.
But yeah, that day was a lot of running. It's a lot of running. I'm not a runner, so I definitely got my cardio that day.
And basically, like the way that the music video came out is the way that the song like felt in my brain. And I knew I wanted it to have like this 80s vibe, and I also knew like I didn't want to sing it.
I wanted her dress to be white, but I wanted it to like not be like pure white. So I chose this dress that had little red hearts on it. And I wanted to, it's this rebirth, but like you're a new person, but you still have the scars. Like you still have the old things that have happened that you carry with you, even if you're not letting them weigh you down. I think it's important to always remember your past and to be really sober about your past and know. I wanted it to be clear that yes, these things are over, but they still happened. So we shot this at Bayfront Park, and she's just running and she's just really happy, and she's like, it's almost like she's broken out of these confines and these situations, and she meets Santiago at the end of it, and he's kind of like waiting for her, but he's like observing her, and he keeps almost like this respectful distance, like yes, I love you, like yes, we're gonna be together forever and you're the one that, you know, we've chosen each other, but it's this nice moment where everything's just wrapped like a nice little bow, and it's kind of like, well, what's gonna happen next? And there is more to this story.
And I think ultimately where the record started, in a very like lost kind of lonely, isolated place, this song took it to its end point. It gave the story an arc, and we were able to kind of resolve it in a really fun and meaningful way with that song.
The premiere was very nerve-wracking because obviously we had seen the final version, but it was, you know, was it gonna work? Was it gonna, you know, I rented out this theater here at the Landmark in Miami, and I, you know, like we rented out a theater, we showed up, like we brought, you know, all our stuff, and I was like, is it gonna work? Is there gonna be technical difficulties? Like we wanted it to feel like a very real like premiere experience, and like a good experience, and we wanted people to feel like very immersed in the visual album.
The premiere itself was the first time I really got to experience the album in all of its components as an audience member, which to me I think was very important as a producer. It kind of gave me perspective on how this would be received on the outside of this.
I was able to really see the work, the beautiful work of Nicolas and of Valerie, of being able to put all the editing together. I knew that it was going to be amazing because of all the hard work that they put into it. Nicolas is very specific on what he likes, and the specific director notes that he gave me were very in tune with Valerie's vision and was very in tune with the whole vision of the entire project, because it's really hard to veer off of the vision when everything is super specific. And so being able to know exactly what you want is something that's really crucial in a director, and I was able to really see that with Nicolas.
It was really amazing to walk into a space and feel the energy just buzzing with excitement. And everybody there had such a supportive energy. It was amazing. The reason why I say it was one of the best days of my life is because I was totally surprised. Like, I even say this like about like co-writing, you know, the music, some of the music, like I was part of the writing process, but I really was very much like hands off, like with production. Like I never really, like I just knew it was like, okay, this is Valerie's story. Like I just kind of helped along the way.
It was scary, like wondering, you know, was everything gonna go well from an event perspective, but then also wondering, were people going to like it? Were people going to understand it? Were people going to feel moved by it? I think these are all questions that you ask yourself when you're putting your art into the world, and it's a very scary thing to be seen and to be perceived.
And so that really translated in the actual full short film. And so it was really interesting to see it all come together, because I had seen a couple of videos here and there of some of the sets that were being done in the other music videos, but really being able to connect to all of the stories and seeing all the stories connect was really cool. I hadn't seen some of the shots that were being filmed. I only went to that one music video set for Newfound Dream, so it was really interesting to see everything else. Especially the beach scene was amazing, and with the door and how it connects to the actual enchanted forest, and everything was so cool.
I never could have imagined the visual beauty that was paired with something that I helped, you know, collaborate on. And like, you know, especially like by the time the film got to like Things My Lovers Gave Me, I was like sobbing. I sobbed with Rooms as well, because I just thought it was so beautiful and powerful. And then with Things My Lovers Gave Me, it was like, oh my gosh, I never thought like this could ever happen. It's kind of like a dream come true to be a part of something so beautiful.
But as soon as I saw myself on the big screen, it was kind of like, you know, seeing it for the first time all over again. Like, it was such a surreal experience to see myself on the big screen. it felt cool to be part of such a fancy party for a project. It felt like the conclusion, a really cathartic conclusion to, you know, months of work on this. And, you know, it just felt like fun to be part of the festivities at the end.
We met a lot of different interesting people, and Valerie looked very beautiful in her dress. And it was super cool to see myself to watch myself on the big screen, like my first time. I hope not the last.
Everything was just so new to me since I've never done this before. And I'm like, whoa, look at all this, the red carpet, look at all the photos. It was just so much stuff going on. And I enjoyed myself. I was there with my friends and family, and it was a beautiful moment. And the experiences just watching that on the big screen, I'm like, wow, the project is made like here, like it came to life, all of this behind the scenes in one piece, and it was just so beautiful to see and witness.
Not only did I get to spend a whole day in Miami, which was really cool, I got to like see things that I've never seen before, but when we got to the actual premiere, like it was a really nice and positive environment. And at first, like I knew that the movie was gonna be like a bunch of I guess mini movies like combined together for each song, but like at the same time I wasn't expecting that, so it was like a really nice surprise. And then I really enjoyed everyone's acting. It was really great. And then seeing myself on the screen, like it just never gets old. Like, wow, like that's me on the screen. But the biggest feeling that I could say with that is just how proud I am, you know, and like just pride from everyone else of how much hard work we put into it and how great it turned out, the project.
And I also liked that Valerie, she sang for us and she played the piano, and it was really, really cool.
It was really special. Like I enjoyed it because I don't think I've ever heard her sing live. So like just getting to be in that room with people that really love her, and her doing the thing that she really likes the most, it was really beautiful.
Valerie had extra pressure because she had to sing, and as always was fantastic. And I think it set the mood for me. Was like, well, Valerie just exposed herself singing. We just and this feeling of being scared of what was going to be on the screen, it faded a little bit because of the energy we were having that night.
And doing some red carpet interviews was really, really cool too. I was able to understand like the vision more of what Nicolas wants to portray with the actual interviews that I got. And so it was really interesting to connect to the people that really like Nicolas's work and the people that are really interested in Valerie's albums and her concepts. And so everyone just came together and were able to celebrate Valerie and Nicolas in this great accomplishment. So it was really great to see that in person.
Then when the film was about to begin, I remember I had this moment. Valerie was, saying, talking with a lot of people, me too, and we were like, discussing the project. People still didn't know what to expect. They had like several theories about like, okay, it's a video and you guys presented each video. Like people didn't know what it was all about. Like minutes before, we ended up just Valerie and I, like in a corner, next to the door, talking about like, no, well, this is it. I felt like it was that moment. Not that I realized, but I guess I confirmed that one of the things that this project gave me and I'm grateful for is I built and I created a bond and a friendship with Valerie, and that extends to her husband and her family.
And I think as far as the whole process was concerned and my work with Valerie, it became, I think, the culmination of all this work that we had put into it, all the work I'd seen her putting into it, to really, it became that moment where I could really feel the payoff and the result of all that hard work.
Some people said like I was crying like at this part, and I remember I had seen it so many times going into the premiere, so I was kind of expecting to be like, not bored, but like, oh, okay, I've seen this, but it was like I was watching it for the first time. I actually really enjoyed it, and I was like, that is the story that I wanted to tell.
Bye.